मैं और आप 20वीं सदी से दूर हैं। हाल की पीढ़ियों को ये पता नहीं है कि 40 साल पहले दुनिया कैसे कोल्ड वॉर में कांपा करती थी। आए दिन विनाश की न्यूक्लियर दौड़ में अमेरिका और सोवियत संघ में ठनी होती थी। कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी का सोवियत संघ दुनिया में अपनी आइडियोलॉजी में लोगों की गुलामी बनाकर नई दुनिया रचने का पागलपन बनाए हुए थे। सचमुच कोई 50 साल मानवता कोल्ड वॉर तथा लाल क्रांति के खौफ में जीती रही। ऐसे खराब वक्त से मानवता को, दुनिया को बाहर निकालने वाले का नाम है मिखाइल गोर्बाचोव। ये बात बेमतलब है कि उनके कारण सोवियत संघ खत्म हुआ, देश बिखरा। मेरा मानना है ऐसा होना मानवता का, मनुष्य का कल्याण था। गोर्बाचोव सही में इंसानों को पिंजरे से बाहर निकालने के ग्लासनोस्त के महामानव थे। पेरेस्ट्रोइका एंड ग्लासनोस्त के वे ट्रूली क्रांति नायक थे। उनके इन दो रूसी जुमलों से दुनिया बेहतर बनी, करोड़ों लोग आज़ाद हुए। और उन मिखाइल गोर्बाचोव ने आज 31 अगस्त 2022 के दिन एट द एज ऑफ 91 में अपनी अंतिम सांस ली। उनकी मौत पर अमेरिका के पूर्व विदेश मंत्री हेनरी किसिंजर ने एक पते की बात कही। He will be remembered in history as a man who started historic transformations that were to the benefit of mankind and to the Russian people. मगर क्या राष्ट्रपति पुतिन का रूस इस सत्य को समझ सकता है? नहीं। इस बात को 30 जून को उन्हें अस्पताल में जाकर देखने वाले अर्थशास्त्री रसलन ग्रिनबर्ग ने इस तरह कहा, He gave us all freedom, but we didn't know what to do with it. रूस और खासकर तानाशाही और गुलामी की आबो हवा में रहे लोग नहीं समझ सकते कि खुली हवा के क्या मायने। नमस्ते, मैं श्रुति व्यास और आज का लॉन्ग शॉट मिखाइल गोर्बाचोव के नाम। Gorbachev was not the typical Russian that we had read in history or are seeing in present. Winner of Nobel Peace Prize, he played a pivotal role in not only ending the Cold War, but also in trying to reform and change the contours of Soviet Union. He was neither arrogant or pompous, nor was he filled with ideas of destruction. But yes, he was relaxed. He was a utopian. उनका सपना था एक ऐसा सोवियत संघ जो लोकतांत्रिक, समाजवादी हो, free and self-sufficiently rich हो. In 1990, when he was invited by the British Prime Minister John Major to attend the G7 in London, he went not as a representative of a dominant power, but rather with a hat in his hand, searching for financial support to ease the economic transition. But sadly, he went back with nothing. So, कौन थे मिखाइल गोर्बाचोव? In 1931 में उनका जन्म एक छोटे से घर में हुआ था। तब स्टालिन का जुल्मी शिकंजा सोवियत संघ पर जकड़ चुका था। उस दशक में कोई 50 लाख सोवियत लोग भूख से मरे थे। He recalled in his memoir that in a single year in 1933, nearly half the population of my native town starved, including 2 sisters and 1 brother of my father. गोर्बाचोव जब पढ़ने के लिए मॉस्को में यूनिवर्सिटी गए तो उन्हें राजधानी और उनके इलाके के विकास की असमानता से धक्का लगा। But that did not deter him. Rather, he remained committed to the Soviet ideology. वे कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी में एक्टिव होने के बाद तेजी से बढ़ते गए। And within 3 years of the death of Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev, following the brief regimes of Yuri Andropov and Konstantin Chernenko, the Politburo elected Gorbachev as General Secretary, and he took over the reins of Soviet Union in 1985. 1985 में सोवियत संघ में पावर संभालने पर उन्हें कड़े फैसले लेने पड़े। अफगानिस्तान में सोवियत सेना के ऑपरेशन के बोझ जैसे कारणों से the USSR had been suffering a long economic stagnation. As such, he implemented the system of Perestroika, that is, a reconstruction, and pushed for a more market-style economy and called for democratic elections. His intentions were clean, bold, and refreshing at that time, and he believed he could not only reform the Communist Party, but also make a more open society while keeping Soviet power, which had existed since 1922, intact. लेकिन एक हादसे ने गॉर्बेचोव को झंझोड़ डाला। उनके आगे पार्टी और सरकार व्यवस्था का खोखलापन सामने आया। A nuclear explosion in Chernobyl, the accident which the government tried to cover up, epitomized its dysfunction, arrogance, and disregard for human life. Gorbachev, 3 weeks after the incidents, seized that chance and condemned the system, determined that the incident would help in accelerating his reforms toward nuclear weapons. And in its place, he offered a glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, reconstruction, and told his colleagues this was the true socialism. वो देश के सिस्टम और नागरिकों के माइंडसेट को बदलने के फैसले करने लगे, who had never experienced democracy, having gone straight from Romanov to Bolshevik dictatorships. He closed the gulags, and in the last days of the Soviet Union, under the glasnost, the mood was conducive towards freedom of expression than what we see in Putin's Russia, where any hint of criticism can bring a jail term. In 1993, when he had won the Nobel Peace Prize, he used a part of that money to kickstart an independent Russian journalism and established a newspaper called Novaya Gazeta, a paper which went on to become the country's most praised independent newspaper, shedding light on some of Russia's darkest chapters. लेकिन अगस्त 1991 में पार्टी के हार्डलाइनरों ने विद्रोह किया. A coup against Gorbachev was conducted and he was put on house arrest in Crimea. But 6 years of freedom, glasnost, had given people the voice of courage, and 3 days later the coup collapsed, allowing the return of Gorbachev and his family back into Moscow. But by now he had started to lose his political ground, and in November Boris Yeltsin rose and banned the Communist Party. While Gorbachev fell on December 25th, he resigned, making his order the lowering of the Soviet red flag. That was his last order, lowering of the Soviet red flag, for the Soviet Union had now ceased to exist. Gorbachev, locked in his dacha, told the advisor, "This may not end well, but you know, in this case, I have faith in Yeltsin. He will not give in it to them." But Gorbachev is known to have played an instrumental role in ending the Cold War. वो वक्त ऐसा था जब दुनिया को सोवियत संघ की अस्थिरता और डामाडोल हालातों से चिंता बनती रहती थी. मगर Gorbachev from the beginning had nurtured a good rapport with the Western leaders. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher had even given him an historic endorsement in 1984. Even though the White House of Ronald Reagan frowned at USSR, considering them the world's evil cheerleader of communism. But with Gorbachev, Reagan shared a belief, and that was the need of not pointing nuclear weapons at each other. Gorbachev and his glamorous wife, Raisa, traveled the world. A Gorby mania had struck, including on the streets of Washington, D.C., where the Soviet leader left the motorcade to touch the hands of Americans. In India, Gorbachev was also given a red carpet welcome during the prime ministership of Rajiv Gandhi. India was his first visit to the developing country in 1985. The then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi hailed him as a crusader for peace. Gorbachev ने एटमी हथियारों की होड़ को खत्म करने और डिसआर्ममेंट पर अमेरिका के साथ समझौता किया. He was a champion of arms control and had discussed the potential elimination of nuclear weapons with Ronald Reagan at the Ireland summit in 1986, which truly paved way towards the end of Cold War. He also oversaw the withdrawal of Soviet troops from about decade-long military campaign in Afghanistan. जैसे ही कोल्ड वॉर खत्म हुआ, दुनिया में विश्वास बना कि पुराना इतिहास अब खत्म हो गया. गॉर्बेचोव के कारण ही ग्लोबलाइजेशन की शुरुआत मान सकते हैं. दुनिया में वाहवाही, लेकिन रशिया में पुराने एम्पायर के खत्म होने के कारण गॉर्बेचोव से ऐसी नफरत हुई. सत्ता से हटने के बाद वे अपने देश में बेगाने रहे. Haunted by the Soviet nostalgia, craving for the Soviet Empire. They saw Gorbachev as the destroyer of the empire and blamed his policies for emboldening nationalists who successfully pushed for independence in the Baltic republics of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. In a 2021 poll, more than 70% of Russians said their country had moved in a negative direction during his rule, while he was previously ranked as the most unpopular Russian leader of the past century in accordance to a state-run pollster. So while the world mourned the demise of a stalwart, a true pioneer of a reformer, Putin's Russia is ambivalent to the death of a leader who gave them all a taste of freedom, of choice, of democracy. Which is why in today's Russia, the president, through his spokesperson, deeply regretted the death of Gorbachev and said he would be sending a condolence telegram to the family. In an essay published in Time magazine in 2016, Gorbachev had attacked Putin's decision to run for a third presidency, calling his policies an obstacle to progress. Putin, in turn, famously referred to the end of Soviet Union as the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century. In his last days, when Ukraine was invaded by Putin, a journalist who had remained close to Gorbachev said that the former Soviet leader was upset by what was happening. Today, the world, the liberalized West, mourns the demise of Gorbachev. उन्होंने बुढ़ापा वाकई गुमनामी में जिया. राष्ट्रपति पुतिन और रूसी एलीट ने उनका वह मान सम्मान नहीं किया जो एक इतिहास पुरुष विश्व मानव का होना चाहिए. Which is why the newspaper that he had helped to establish in 1993 today ceased to exist. यही राजनीति का कटु सत्य है कि राष्ट्रवाद के घेरों में ग्लोबल कंसर्न एंड ह्यूमन डिग्निटी की वैल्यूज़ के वर्ल्ड कंट्रीब्यूशन इतिहास में होते तो हैं, लेकिन पावर के कंटेम्प्रेरी स्ट्रक्चर में नहीं. आज के लिए बस इतना ही. Thank you for listening. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel for all the latest gossip on politics and my take on world affairs.